All right, so we are doing the recording for the Linux Systems Administration Unit 7. We have not even done this in the group yet. We're going to do this in the group in about 2 hours, but I'm going to get the two recordings out and done so that we can have them for everybody. So people that maybe need to miss the group today and want to see this. Today is the 26th of October, and again, Linux Systems Administration Unit 2. So what are we doing in this course? We're talking about how to be Linux systems administrators. Here's a little bit of cleanup and housekeeping stuff. If you have questions, ask me in Discord. I prefer if you ask them in the right place so that everybody gets the right information and that kind of stuff. This is our 7th class meeting. If I had any announcements or rescheduling, they would go here. Technically, we're doing the meeting here in a few minutes, probably about 2 hours or so. So just a quick reminder, hold all your exercise sheets that I'm going to assign. So this is a completely voluntary, completely free course down in our Discord. If you want to do it, feel free to hop in there and do it. Okay, so last week we talked about fixing the firewall on your servers, and you find the way to fix it by deconflicting open ports that were already assigned through engineering, rigor and that kind of stuff, and the new security things that had come in. And we talked about how you deconflict those, and you went and did a little bit of research. Then after that, you got branded as the firewall guy, which happens in companies. You know how to do things, so you get to do everything. And so what I have you do then is you go look at explain the firewall or the WAF to your teams, right? Let me go check. Let me make sure I'm on the right stuff here. Okay, good. I got everything. In case people try to talk to me over there. I need to check one other thing. Make sure that that's correct. Good. Okay. So we got everything there. So if you're doing this with me or you're following along, get a worksheet out, open up LogSec or Notepad++ and take notes of terminology and things that you don't know. And then there's labs each week, and then you can keep the information from those labs for yourself, turn them into documents and notes for you. And then also you can post, there's a lab discussion thread if you have any questions. That's just kind of running with everything in the course. Again, everything's down in Discord, everything's free, so feel free to hop in there and do that stuff. All right, so we come over here and we're up to for Unit 7. So for this week, what we're talking about is software security updates, package managers, all the kind of things that you're going to get your hands on as a systems administrator. Now, a lot of times as a systems administrator, you're not updating low-level packages, but maybe you're doing updates for security patching monthly, or maybe you're just installing something that a very specific team needs. You can learn how to do that this week, kind of. And I'm showing you a lot of things where it's like everything at the command line is either you're setting something or you're checking something. So a lot of this, while we are setting things and installing things, we're also checking and looking at what's there and understanding how if somebody comes to us with a question and says, how did this get installed or when did this get installed? Well, we can go answer that, right? We have these tools to do this stuff. So I ask you to go find these questions. Why is software versioning so important to security? I want you to think about why is the software, if you've ever looked at a CVE, common vulnerability and exploits, they're all tied to specific version numbers of things. That could be a hint. Software versioning will tell you how far back you are from what's current. You can go look at what's the most recent release and then see if you're a certain amount of major or minor or patch versions back, which all comes back to a concept we're going to talk about today with semantic versioning, right? So you need to understand what software versioning is and how to look for it and what the standards are that we kind of use, right? And you're going to figure that out as we go, but it's also something that you're going to write about. Then installing software and verifying it's approved to put on the system. So in the question, people always find vulnerabilities over time, right? The entropy and decay of systems is a real thing. So and people finding probative things from just X amount of inputs is a real thing. So installing software and verifying it is approved to put on the system. How do we know where our system gets software from? What does it mean to have a repository, right? These are the things we're going to talk about. And then software package groups. Software package groups exist, and they've got a purpose, and they can be used by people, but they're probably not something you're going to use as an administrator in a running live system. but I do give you a little bit of a write-up why or why not you might be using them, right? So then your worksheet, you've got notes. You can take notes in the worksheet. I've released everything for Unit 7 and 8 on the Discord already, so it's all there. You guys can get in there. There's a lab environment. You guys have a lab environment that we'll talk about here, and there's all that. And then keep working on your project. Those are the main things I want you to do for this week. All right, so topics of this discussion. Package management. How do we update? When do we update? How do we remove old unused software? Where software packages are stored? When were they last updated? What files are brought in with your package or from a package manager? What other things are going to get installed? We need to understand, because we're at some level, when you're used to using computers from the time you were a child, most of us were using computers probably since we were in our single digit age, you just update stuff, whatever. But when you're the administrator in charge of it, when you just update stuff, you touch all these other things. And there's kind of like, it's almost like if you've ever seen like a comet out in space and it's got all this like debris behind it. There's all these other things that happen in your system when you use package managers. And even if you remove that package, does it actually remove all those dependencies? Or do they stay around as kind of like these artifacts of things that have happened? And are they just kind of like junk floating around in the medium Earth orbit, where all the junk is up in space, right? Because low Earth orbit burns up every 7 years, 3 to 7 years, and then medium Earth orbit just kind of hangs out up there. We don't even know when that's all coming down. Anyways, all right. And then so that's topics of discussions. And then what are repos? We're going to talk about places your software trust, or places your system trusts to allow package managers to install software from, right? They can be local, they can be remote. You can enable or disable them as you wish. And then you can also force GPG verification of all software found in the repository. So you download a GPG directly from them, and you hold that over here. And then when you go download software from the approved repository, you can go and you can look at them without letting them see each other, right? You're looking over here and looking over here and go, yeah, I accept that. It's signed by the same key that I have over here that I got from them in what we call an out-of-band fashion, right? Arthur, thanks for coming by. We're just recording Unit 7 right now, so I want to make sure you guys have this. We'll go a little more into it, and we'll touch all the pieces and stuff in a couple of hours when we actually do the meeting. I just wanted to get this recorded now so we have it. What is semantic versioning? So you can go to semver.org, but you're going to get a major, a minor, and a patch increment typically on a system. Major version when you make incompatible API changes, or there's a major functionality difference. You get this in the kernel. So this is a kernel down here. And what version of the kernel are we on? What major version of the Linux kernel are we on? Right? We're on Rocky 9. And if I were to ask you, does Rocky 9 Linux use the 4, the 5, or the 6 Linux kernel? You might look at this and go, well, at the major level, this is a 5 kernel. This is a 5 kernel. So all things that I go look at, and all modules, and all, if I'm going to add a host bus adapter to this, or I'm going to build some Mellanox InfiniBand type, maybe I need some high-speed storage connected, I'm going to be going based off packages and drivers that were built for the 5 kernel. Doesn't matter anymore that it's Rocky whatever. Now, granted, names and architectures tend to go together, so that does mean something. But my point is, when you're looking at compatibility diagrams and stuff, but what I'm saying is you could add a different kernel to this system. You can always do that. Are you going to break all kinds of crap? Probably. But the point is you have that. Anyway, so major, minor, patch version. So what would be the minor version of this? You can go look that up. What's the patch version? And then the patch version, because the Linux kernel is kind of an in-depth process, there's an extension of that over here. But this is typically major, minor, and patch versions right here for your systems. And then look, even the patch versions have major, minor, and patch versions of themselves, because it's such a big complex thing, right? All right, so what can we learn? So as we go into, and we're going to dig into this in the labs and stuff as you guys go and do your labs, but we go look at a Rocky box and we just do an RPM, which is the Red Hat Package Manager, and we query for when the kernel core right here was installed. And can I find that was installed on this system on June 8th at this time? Yes. Can I find all the licenses that are brought forward with it? And can I find what the source RPM was in case I ever needed to validate that? Yes. Can I go find the RSA SHA-256 signature that went with it? Yes. I can find all of these different things that might be useful for me to go find out more information about how and when this got installed. And that's very useful. Here's the version and there's the release. Yeah, there you go. So there's the version numbering and there's the release there. So that's useful for us to know, right? So I come down here and I say, what if we were to try to update? So we know, and we're going to get into this in the labs here in a second, but we know how a system updates, but what might that look like in an actual environment? So we've got maybe a prod environment, and then before we get to prod, we've got test, QA, and maybe dev over here where we're doing stuff. And this is just, actually it's funny, I allowed Excalidraw to draw this for me, but this is accurate enough that I could explain it. What we tend to do is at the beginning of each month, this would start at the beginning of each month, we would download whatever's in the software repos down to our controlled internal repos. And that will become a, like, November 1st. In a few days, I would pull down the November 1st version of software for my controlled internal repo. And then that would become the November 1st, let's say, it would become like a life cycle. And we would push that into the dev environment. From there, we would do some testing and stuff, and this is kind of not directly in the order that we would go in, but we would have to deploy those to the dev environment. So how we would do that, we'd go to all the dev machines. We would open up the life cycle in their repositories that they're going to. Excuse me, and they would pull down all the updates that they thought they needed out of that controlled internal repo. We would test them. We would make sure everything is good. Excuse me. And then when we're ready, we would move that forward maybe a week later into the test environment. And the way we would do that is our test environment servers would be allowed, it would kind of slide forward, and we call it life cycles in Satellite, but I like life cycles as well. You can use this in Pulp as well. Pulp is a component. It's one of the open source components that goes into Satellite. So we could slide that forward, and then the next machine, the test environments, would be able to pull that down, and we would test and we would validate. And then maybe by the end of the month, we would have done enough testing in our dev, our test, and our QA environments and done whatever we wanted to do. And finally, the prod environment servers would be allowed to pull down that info, pull down those life cycle, again, from our controlled repo that was locked in at November 1st. And then we would patch and we would make sure everything's good. We would roll through load balancer environments so that we don't take servers down, always focused on uptime and all these kind of things, right? But the point is, we can update the servers that exist as they kind of move forward through a life cycle. Servers tend to, there's two ways to deal with servers in an environment. There is the stateful, kind of like a fat, thick node, whatever you want to call it. We call them stateful. They are servers that are built one day and they die about 3 years later. About the average. In physical machines, that makes a lot of sense because that's about how often you have to refresh hardware. So, and you're refreshing a third of your hardware every year, typically in most data center environments, depending on the posture of your company. But when you go to do this patching, you can just have a fat machine or a stateful machine that just keep getting more patches the whole time along. Nowadays, though, with like DevOps and this kind of stuff, and virtual machines, what we could do instead is we could let a machine kind of die in place and he would pass the torch on to a new machine that was built and just deployed in his place. All of those kind of things are going to be based on how well your build pipelines are and some of these other things like we used to do in our dev environment. We would give you any type of server you wanted, but that server died 3 months later. There was no way to go in and extend that one server. However, you had storage, you could push it up to storage, and you could request the exact same server to start the next day, and that new server would be all of our new baselines and all of our new stuff, and that old server would die, and your new one would come up and it would reattach, and you might have to set up your environment a little bit, but for people that had their own home environments and we had them follow them, it was basically like they didn't even know that their server was gone. It was almost like we were just changing the tires on their car at 60 miles an hour. If you've ever seen somebody do that, you know, they ramp the car up to the side and they're changing the tires on it, like on a track, like some daredevil people. But anyways, the point is we could do that type of stuff. but we have to have really good stuff. This is the older model of how we kind of updated things. All right, so anyways, lab tasks this week: RPM to query package information, DNF repos, DNF to install software. We can exclude software from updates. We don't have to always update software. DNF for software dependencies, DNF for searching for software, and then DNF with package groups. So I'm going to pull up the worksheet for this week. And, this is the same thing that I kind of show you guys every week. You've got a worksheet. It's up in the Discord. It's free. And you go in there, and I gave you guys 3 discussion questions this week. And the 3 discussion questions are again, designed to make you think about this stuff. And the first one is, why is software versioning so important to software security? Can you find 3 reasons from the internet, AI, or your peers? People are discussing stuff down in the discussion posts. They're threads, so you can go watch the threads or whatever. But why is software versioning so important to software security? That's the thing to think about. Then I come down here and software discussion question 2. So with our discussions, you have to do 1 post per week and then 1 response. So you have 6 posts to do this week if you're doing it. Well, and if you're doing the other one, you got another 4 posts to do as well. But you got 2 weeks to do them all, I guess. So that'll be good. So discussion post 2 is, you are new to a Linux team. That's common, right? You're new. You're not. Some of you are not even administrators yet, so we're getting ready for that. But you're new to a Linux team. A ticket has come in from an application team and has already been escalated to your manager. So by the time you even get alerted, it's already been escalated, meaning people are breathing down your neck. They want software installed on one of the servers, but you cannot find any documentation, and your security team is out to lunch. They're just not responding. Out to lunch can be literal, or it can just be they're not listening, right? You remember from some early documentation that you read that all the software in the internal repos are currently approved. You could deploy them to any server you want. But you also want to verify by checking some of the other servers that the software exists, and there's an urgent ask from your manager. He's hovering. So how can you check for all the repos to see which ones are active? How would you check another server to see if that software was installed there? And if you find the software, how might you figure out when it was installed on that other machine? So these are things to think about. We also hit a lot of this in the lab. Then we come down here for discussion 3, and it says after you've completed the lab. So I expect you to have completed the lab before you do 3. I say, looking at the concept of group install from DNF or Yum. We're using mostly DNF. Why do you think an administrator might never want to use that in a running system? Or why might an engineer want to use it? So engineers are doing things before systems get built. Admins are typically running them. This is a thought exercise. It's not right or wrong, but it's something to think about. What's the concept of software bloat? What is a security baseline? And what do you think is a performance baseline? So you can go find out all of those things. Definitions and terminology for this week, things for you to study or read or write down if you hear me talking about them and you're like, what the heck is that? There's a lab, so patch and package management. Patch and package management, yep. Then you go through your project, start working on your project if you're not doing that yet. We're halfway through the course by the time I get back. Digging deeper, what is semantic versioning? So I have you go read about that a little bit and see where that comes from. What questions do you still have about this week? And how does being a systems administrator, how does the security that we do differ from maybe what you expected, right? Because we do a lot of security stuff over here. All right, I'm going to get that out of the way real quick. We're going to go back over here. I'm going to pull up the lab for this week, and we're going to talk through a little bit of the lab stuff. So in the lab, I make you drop down and do some simple things. So I'm in Rocky 8 over here, which is one of our lab devices. You can hop in the lab anytime. Let me move that up a little bit. It's not covering me talking. All right. And you might just start doing some of these commands, RPM-QA, and pipe it through more, and it's just going to show us a bunch of stuff. So let me ask you this: if I were to come to you as a, I'm the governance, risk, and compliance manager, which means that I'm a security guy, and I come and ask you a question, could you pull all of the list of software from all of the servers in the company? And this is a way that you might start that. Now look, he didn't tell you to format it in a certain way. I mean, he might ask you to count them. Just as a real quick thing, I can go and I can say how I could very quickly, so watch, I could bounce out of this and I can go to one of my Ansible commands, right? And I could say, okay, could I find if all the servers have approximately the same number of installed software packages. I expect them to be different because I've added some to them, but I could go do that real quick. What if they just said, hey, can you give me a quick comparison and see if any of my nodes are different? Rocky 2's different. Rocky 10's different. People have been on those, and that's fine. You know, that's what the lab's for. But some have had more things installed on them. So we can go find that, like, quick, right? Because we understand our tools. This could be cut all kinds of different ways. I could search for just open SSL, right? RPM QA grep-i, right? And I can see just the open SSL versions maybe. And I could see if, you know, are we at least at a certain version? You know, they're asking us for, did something change? Do I think that somebody's compromised one of my machines and added the wrong stuff on it? So right away, I just drop you in and start making you do commands. So if you guys are doing these labs, a lot of this is about, it would be like if I said, hey, can you examine this phone for me? Everybody's going to probably pick the phone up first. And they're going to go, well, I mean, it's approximately, I don't know, 5 inches by 3, you know, maybe 2.5 inches. And then you go, it looks like it's got a case on it, and it looks like it's got a cover, and the cover's pretty cracked. And everybody's going to focus on it differently. Somebody's going to tell me it's mostly black. Somebody's going to tell me it's got 6 cameras. But do you guys see how, like, things are going to go different directions almost immediately in everybody's head? If I have 100 cats and I'm trying to herd all those cats in one direction, those cats are going to go like this. They're just going to scatter, right? So what I'm trying to show you guys with a lot of these labs is simply get your hands on it, map out kind of in your mind all the things that you have the capabilities to do. We could sit around all week and we wouldn't know all the things that might come up, like in those discussion questions, but we can understand our tools. It's a lot like that movie Gladiator, where he's like, it doesn't matter what comes out of these gates. If we stick together, we've got a better chance of surviving. I don't know if you guys remember, they're about to fight the Battle of Carthage, and they're just going to get murdered. That's what's going to happen to his little gladiator group. And they end up winning because they stick together, they get some shields, they knock over the guys in their chariots, they start killing everybody. I don't know if you guys remember that. It's a pretty violent movie. It's great. It's great. They made a second one. I haven't seen the second one yet, though. But anyway, so my point is, now we start looking at tools. So I say, is a tool here? So this image magic, which is the tool that I like to use, it's not here. My system goes and searches through all of them for me, and it looks at all those lines, and it doesn't. Oh, well, I want to go back in my Rocky box, by the way. It's not there. RPM-QA grep-i for image. I can just look for image and see if image magic is there. I don't have any image packages on here. But I can go and say DNF install image magic. And it's funny, if you spell it wrong like I have there, I actually have it spelled wrong, it's gonna say, can't help you, buddy. But did you mean this package maybe? It tries to be helpful. And I say, well, yeah, no, I did mean that one. With the capitals, right? You got to spell it with the capitals. And now if I do that install, it's gonna say, yeah. Yeah, it's like that guy on I think he's on Instagram. He's like, yeah, buddy, yeah. Yeah, we can install that for you. Yeah, we'll do it real quick. And then he watches some stupid video, and he's just sitting there like, yeah, buddy, yeah. I think that guy's hilarious. He pops up on my feed every now and then. But so look, we want to install this, but now we start to get this concept of dependencies. Back in the day, guys, so back when I started this, and let me be like Deckard Cain for a second. You used to have to go install this. Typically, you had to make it from scratch, and then you had to go have all that stuff there that was needed before your make install was going to work, right? And it wasn't, and your configure might work, but your configure would typically tell you what you were missing, and that would go look at like the package installer for make and tell you all these things, and you had to go find all this stuff, and you had to have the right version of GCC to compile something, and you had to have all these different things that were going to affect it. So this is, I kind of feel like, and I'm spoiled too, don't get me wrong, but like package managers spoil us. But there are things that are happening here that are problems in the systems engineering world. In the systems admin world, somebody asks me for image magic, I've got permission to install it, let's do it. But for the systems engineer, and then for your risk and security compliance teams, this is a bit of a problem. These are all these other things now that we now have to watch for CVEs for and make sure that and we have tools that'll do that for us, or we can write them ourselves. But we can go compare the CVEs to see if any P11 kit server update, if there's been any alerts or errors found for that from the people that are checking for exploits. And there's a big National Institute of Standards and Technology, a NIST database for that. And most of the big, if you look at Qualys or Tenable Security, these different big companies, that's what they're doing, is they're just going and looking at the open source database, finding a way to check things, and then their scanners just run scans on your systems as privileged users typically to find out if there's errors. That's literally all that's happening. That's why it's so important you keep track of your versions. If that tool isn't scanning something, you have to understand this for yourself, right? Anyway, so then I get asked, do I want to install 353 megs of data? And I say, you know what? No, let's not do that. And DNF does something different than Yum used to. DNF just says, okay, whatever, throws it away. Yum used to always go and write out a transaction log in temp, and it would tell you, hey, if you ever want to rerun this transaction, just go and run Yum, I think it's like Yum transaction or Yum complete or something like that, against that temp file, and it would go right back to here and ask me if I wanted to do this with the same exact packages. So that was kind of a nice little thing. DNF doesn't have that. It probably has that functionality built in somewhere, but it was removed as a default. I can see that. So now, if I had installed it, I could go see that it was there. And then we start to walk through. I make you do some math stuff just for fun. My labs always have different stuff for fun. And then I have you go in and start to look at where packages. So we just do a run through of everything with the Red Hat Package Manager, right? And we start to QI for systemd. So systemd is a package that's in there. And I can see when it was installed, June 8th. That's probably when I built this container. And I can see all of these things that are in there. I can see where it came from. I can see where it was built and how it was built. And I can see the source RPM that was used to install it on this machine. I can see the license. I need to keep that license with it to make it legal for me to use different people's components of that service, right? Because that's one of the things about open source. It's not free. Like, you can't do whatever you want with it. It's free. Oh, let me take back. It is free for you to do whatever you want with, provided you follow their rules. And one of the rules is always that you carry the license forward. So if I were to give this server to one of you, I have to bring that license forward with it. I can't strip that license off and go, I could call this Scott's Linux all I want, but I can't call it Scott's Linux and remove that license and say, now you can't use the software and take the source. You can't. That's not how open source works. You have to give the license and the original with it. But I mean, that's not the purpose of this. I'm just telling you, look at all this stuff you can see. So then I say, well, I want to maybe go look at some of the files and configuration files that came from that. So rpm-qc for systemd. And here are the config files that you can go edit to change how systemd works. So these are all the things that the system, the package manager, knows that configure the systemd's operation. These came with it. All the packages that ever came with it are right here. rpm-ql systemd. And look, if nobody's ever shown you this or walked you through some of this, this may come as like a surprise to some of you. Like, I didn't realize that there were all these man pages that came with systemd. And if I had to delete these for some reason for storage space or something, God forbid you got to do that. But let's say some of these got deleted. How would I get them back? How would I know where I got them from? I got them from that package, that RPM package that we just looked at a little while ago. Whatever that RPM package was. I don't know. It's gone. Gone forever. But the point is, there's all this stuff here. Let me say rpm-q capital R systemd. Look at all the stuff that's here. These are all of the capabilities on this system that have to be here. These are all the things that need to be installed for me to be able to go ahead and use. I don't know why this thing keeps doing that, but this is what I need there. That's super fucking annoying. Hold on. There we go. All right. For some reason, I couldn't get to the top of this. There we go. So here's a bunch of dependencies. There's some other things that we could then do, but the main point is we can see what packages need to be there for this to work. we can, if we're used to using a lot of this, we can look at the changelog. So changelog for systemd. And look, so a changelog, if you're brand new to looking at a package of some type, or you're just installing the package for the first time in your environment, a changelog isn't probably that big a deal to you. But if you're a developer that uses systemd as like a backend for a bunch of your stuff, and you're constantly looking at how systemd interacts with and starts services, the changelog is very important to you. But if, you know, again, if you're just some admin that's kind of adding stuff to a server, this isn't as important. But if somebody were to say, hey, can you verify that, like, you know, they've added in that check in this version you have, yeah, you can go check that, and then you can see the number. You can also do that just by knowing the version number, but the point is you can go and read things about stuff that's happening and see what the differences are in your system. It's your system. You can do literally whatever you want. Some of this stuff I'm showing you is less interesting for like a admin level, but it's a lot more interesting as you're building servers and trying to figure out why certain things aren't interacting the way that you're used to, right? So you can go and find more and more information about this. All right. You can update systemd if you need to. So DNF update just systemd if I think that needed to be updated in my system. And if there's a version update for it, I can find it. I can say, we need this new version. And I can say, you know what? No, I'm not ready for that. But what version do I have? So I say RPM, maybe QI for systemd, grep-i version, maybe. And I'm on version 252. And maybe I just throw a head on there because I know it's in the first 10. And I say, I'm on 252 32-4, and this is 4.7. So maybe that's a newer version, and maybe I know that all the way up to 4.3, there's some type of vulnerability in systemd for starting processes that shouldn't be started. So I know that my security team has told me that I need to get at least to version 4.3. In my repos, what I've downloaded in the last week, according to that process we talked about earlier, I see that I can go past 4.3. Good. Now I start to build a plan for how I'm going to update these servers and get them rolled forward to that new level, and then I'm happy. I've completed that. I've calmed that one problem and that one vulnerability out of my system, and then I don't get bugged anymore by anybody, leaving me time to go back to watching Netflix or whatever I want to do. Right? This is what we do as systems systems engineers for sure, but systems admins are similar as they're operating systems and thinking about how to keep them secure moving forward. All right. So, you know, RPM QA, find some other interesting packages. Then we start talking about DNF and how it came from Yum and Yellow Dog update. And then we start going down through, and we can see, this is a fun one, we can see all the things that have been installed on the system. So we can say DNF repo list. Here's the repos my system's going to trust. And then I can say DNF history. Excuse me. And I can see how my system has been updated since it was first built. Look at all these nice little things. Somebody installed Firewall D, that was probably me. I installed nmap and unzip and systat, and I did all of those in separate commands so we could see them all. I added SC Linux at one point because people asked me to. Well, actually, we wanted to look at SC Linux in the lab, so we added those. And I can see all of these. And actually, you can roll back and pull some of these things out as well. So you have a lot of capabilities in here. How's it going, Austin? We're just recording Unit 7, so I'm just kind of going through some of the topical pieces. Now, where are the repos stored? So I told you you've got these software repos, and they are places that your system trusts that it can download software from, right? So you come over here, and those are still kept in yum.repos.d. They haven't changed that yet. And if I go in here and look at like rocky.repo, I can see a definition right here. Here's the base OS. Here's how it's all defined. We do have a GPG key, and we do require that there's a GPG check before we download software. And this is an enabled repo right here. Those are kind of the important things that we need to look at here, right? Here's the mirror list, and then base URL is commented out, but it's not really needed because mirror list can have a list of mirrors, and that's an acceptable one that's going to work. So if that works, I could go and I could download software from that trusted location. Sometimes in big high-performance compute clusters, these, instead of having a URL like this, we will have a file location and we'll point it directly to a file on a local machine, like if we're building a chroot environment. I don't think we have any examples of that in here. Let's see if we have any examples of files. No, I don't think we do. So if we had like a local repo, but we don't have any of those on here. So we could do those. We could download an ISO package and we could make a repo from an ISO that was maybe this Rocky 9.3, and then I could always just have the ability to add the original software to these systems. I don't do that because I trust that things are going to be out there if I ever need them. But this is the thing, you know, what do you want to control and what do you want to update in an environment? Your Red Hat servers are going to tend to be pointing to like a satellite server, and they're going to probably be updating off of satellite uses not pods. What are they called when they're like the little like agent? There's like little agent servers that it uses for them. I forget what they're called though. Doesn't matter that much, but so then I can come in here and I can disable the base OS, and then I can go check again, and I would see that if I disabled the base OS, that it's not on there anymore. So let's just do this. Let's check this real quick. Let's grep in here for say -I capital E, and then we'll say name, and we'll look for enable, right? So we'll look for those, and we'll see that some are enabled and some are disabled. Do you guys agree? Do you see that, how I pulled that from a file? Now, we're going to say right there what we just saw, DNF config manager, and we're going to say disable base OS, right? And that's going to disable it. Now, if I go look, just like from up here a little while ago, the repo list, I'm not going to see base OS in there anymore. And now if I go and I search base OS, all it did, like this is the clever little thing that command did, guys, was it turned that bit off. Do you guys see how it's on there and it's not on right there? That's literally all that did. It's not some clever some magical spell that I cast that nobody could ever go figure out. You can see on your systems what locations you're going to be looking for software. All right, I can turn that back on. I'm going to enable it. Enable base OS, and then we could just do that search again, and I'll do like a head on it so it'll only show the first 10. And there, look, that line is back enabled. That's all it was. It's not magic, guys. It's only, there's that saying about any technology sufficiently advanced enough looks like magic. I think it was that Asimov that said that? I don't know exactly who it was. I thought it was Asimov, but like one of the sci-fi guys. But you can demystify all this stuff and see where everything points if you just spend a little bit of time with it. So where does this come into like Linux systems administration? Because a lot of times adding software packages is an engineering function as I build a server. But sometimes admins need to be able to install and turn things on and turn things off and that kind of stuff as well. And this is where you do it. You want to update a server, but somebody's like, oh, this has happened to me before. Some of our devs had gotten a hold of a group of servers that they had root on, and they were like in there, like all dug in, and they would turn on a package. So they had a repo that was local to it was like server 86 of some number of servers that they had, and all their servers pointed to it. But then when we went to do patching, they would have that repo off, but all their servers would still be pointing to it. So none of their servers could patch and update, because one thing that happens with DNF is if it can't pull all the metadata for all the services that are enabled repos, it'll just crap all over the place and not work. So these guys had this breaking condition, and we ended up writing a script that, as part of our play, and it eventually later became an Ansible playbook, we moved all of their stuff out and only put our stuff in etsy-yum.repos.d. Then we reloaded the repo list, and then we only downloaded our stuff, and then we put all their crap back later, because we were just like, whatever. If we can't, and then what we did was, they had that root access from years long past. In the newer versions of the servers, we did not give them root. And that's one of those things, like I tell you guys, there's certain things that I'll plant my flag on a hill and die about, and one of them is who gets root in an environment. Devs do not get root. Only the admins, only the guys who are going to get called late at night to get the shit back up are the guys that can have root. And that is something I'll plant my flag and die on a hill for that one. So, all right. I'll leave a company before I'll change that one. I've told you guys about that. All right, so you can go look. You can go check all this stuff out. Then we start to say, well, what if I want to install MariaDB, and let's search and do search all for it. So let's go look. There's a difference here. If I say DNF search for MariaDB, that's a open source database that got forked off when MySQL got bought by Oracle, right? So now it says, here's the things that exactly match the name, and then the name and the summary matches. And that's kind of cool. But what if I say search all? Search all is going to give me a slightly different output. And you can go look at what that output difference is. There's more things that came out here. And I say in the lab, what's the difference? Why might you want to know the difference? I prefer to use search all. But if you do a DNF install MariaDB, it'll also do the search for you anyways. But I'm just saying, if you want to search for things that are, you're like, well, I don't need that thing, but I need something that has like a name. One example of this is like Python is almost always in front of things nowadays. Like if like a Python Ansible or like a Python Postgres, those kind of things. Excuse me. You'll find sometimes that that those things will. So you might not find, like if I do DNF install Ansible, let's say it couldn't find it right away because it might not, but then it's already installed. But if I say search all for Ansible, I might find some that have like Python at the beginning of them or something, right? Or, you know, it just depends on the different type of version that you're on. Yeah, so like Python 3 PyTest testing for Ansible. I don't know, maybe that's something for linting up Ansible or something, or using PyTest, right? All right, so my point in showing you that is there's a tremendous amount of things that you can go and check, and I can't prescribe all the things you might run into. I just can show you like what the tools can kind of do. So that's a lab for this week. Gets all the way down here. This is one of my favorite ones too. If you've got a tool, right, like SAR, and SAR's on my system, but if SAR wasn't on my, or if I had IOStat, IOStat's there. What about CalSay? Is CalSay? Oh, it's CalSay. Is CalSay there? All right, we'll check. So you echo something out, pipe it through CalSay. All right, Cal thinks you're doing great. But let's say I wanted to know, okay, how the heck did somebody put that on my system? I can, if it was installed through DNF in the package manager, I can say DNF what provides CalSay. So whether it was there or not, this is a useful tool because it can tell me how to get rid of it. Or if somebody was complaining, or a script was complaining at line, 700 and something, we don't have unzip, then I could figure out, well, where does the unzip package from? So DNF what provides unzip. This actually becomes pretty useful as well if you start to see libraries and stuff. And it's like this libc compiler thing isn't here, and you're like, I don't even know what that is. I'm just gonna throw it in Google. Before you throw it in Google, you can throw it in what provides, and if it's anywhere in a package list of any of the RPMs that are up there, it'll be found out of the metadata. So it'll tell you how to go get that package on your system. That's super powerful. That's super useful. Because again, a lot of times in the admin world, you're like down in the trenches trying to keep stuff running, trying to keep developers on systems running in their dev environments by modifying things from the original baseline, hopefully documenting it so that it's easier to do the next time, and then you go. All right, there's a group install. I don't really use this much, but it's good to know. There's a group list. So let's say I had a set of servers, and we just needed to make scientific support part of them. We need to add these scientific tools. I prefer to do tools individually, but maybe somebody insists that the whole scientific support package will have all the things they need, right? And maybe that's something that they've convinced management, so now it's getting pushed down. It's in a dev environment, so you're like, whatever, I'll just put it on the dev boxes, and we'll let the stuff go where it may. I can say DNF group install scientific support. I don't have to hit a -y in there, so it's automatic, and I can see what this is going to install, and I should be able to. It's weird. I thought it would show me. Let's hit Y. we'll let it. It's interesting that it did that. Normally it shows you all the packages, but maybe that's just that's a group, so maybe it's not one of these that's going to install everything. But anyway, so now we've got that group, and then we're going to be able to install maybe more packages from that if we want to, right? It's kind of interesting. All right. So anyways, you can go and you can look at all that stuff, and that's pretty much the whole lab. So what did we do today? We looked at, start to finish, we're doing security stuff. There's my contact information if you guys need to get a hold of me. We looked at software package management. What's there on a system? What do we want to put there? Where are we going to get it from? How are we going to configure those things? How could we configure them to be, they're just trust locations for us. We can have them local. We can build local repositories. We can trust repositories that are out in the world. We can change that so we don't trust anything out in the world. We can change it so we trust it more by completely getting rid of that GPG key requirement, and then we're just everything's gonna land on these servers anytime you hit install, right? So that's something to think about. All right. So this one's kind of short. This is about our normal time now. I'm trying to keep them about 45 minutes to an hour, but again, we're going through our syllabus here. This was security and package management stuff. Right, I'm gonna get off of here, and then I'm gonna do section unit 8 as well. I'm gonna do it today because I'm out of town next week. But we talked about all of these different components, and specifically in the worksheet, the things that you're doing and the stuff that you're looking at to be successful. Remember, this week has 3 discussion questions. I wanted to give you guys more stuff to think about, kind of as we went. All right. If anybody wants to know where our Discord is, here's our Discord. That's where all the lab stuff is. So if you want to get involved in this course, there's still time. We are hitting week 7 today. And then, we're going up to week 16 at the end of the year. And then this will be all done. The course will always be free on our Discord. But people that finish it in the time that we've currently allotted will be getting a little Linux Systems Administration certificate that honestly might never be given away again. So it'll be valuable to the people who earn it, I think. I think a lot of the stuff's valuable in general, but that's going to be for you guys to kind of decide. All right, I'm going to hop off of here. If you guys see me hop right back on stream, it is probably because I am going to go and record Unit 8 here in a little bit too. So, and then we also have the meeting in about an hour and a half. We've got the meeting. So if anybody wants to come and hang out and do that, we're going to be doing that as well. So I appreciate you guys coming by, and I will talk to some of you later.